It's 7 o'clock by my Mickey. I'm going to work our way forward. Everybody is present. Anyone like to make comment this evening? Yes, John.
I would, Bernie. I wondered what the status of the solar project is. Is it a go? And if it is, what do you expect as far as possible revenue from the whole thing?
Yeah.
And if it's not a go, why isn't it?
Three good questions. I'll try to answer them all. Status is right now, we're going forward still. The big issue to be dealt with, because it appears prevailing wage, I remember if you were here when we went through that presentation, we're processing with both prevailing and standard wage. Obviously there's a difference in the savings. The company, I've spoken with Mike Zerlo a number of times, feel it would go standard. I'm not that confident. I've spoken with the Department of Labor. I think they've got a pretty good case. I think there is an appeal. The last conversation I had was by the company using their resources. We're not investing in that. I don't know what others are doing. That's important. The other bigger piece of that is the property taxes. I met with the Cernak School Superintendent last week, along with Dr. Brimstein from the Peru School District that also wants to do one. We shared with them that currently this property doesn't provide any school revenue. With the solar project, they could get some. We also honestly shared if the school district wants 100%, the project's over. We'll go back to zero for them. As far as I'm concerned, it's a board decision. It looks like the savings would be so small, I don't want to gamble 15 years on it. If we didn't have standard, if we had a revenue sharing with the school district that was agreeable, I think we'd have a good argument to go forward in a 15-year. I had mentioned at one point, at the very beginning, it looked like first year we could save $100,000. That's an awful lot of money. As I looked closer at the meters, the rates, the use, things we've done along the way to save energy, really indicated that what they anticipated wasn't true. I would say right now, and it's just my personal guesstimate, there's a possibility we could save $35,000 to $45,000, depending on how the property tax thing goes a year, which is substantial. So we're going forward. Those issues have to be resolved. There'll be another meeting soon. We did a proposal on a revenue sharing agreement with the school district. In that conversation, we met with them. The superintendent was open-minded, and he scheduled a meeting with the subcommittee of the board to review that. If they feel comfortable with it, then it would go forward to the school board. They would have to review it, make some comments back, eventually get to a final agreement. Could be a couple of months, and then we could continue to go forward. The project didn't expect to start any real activity until next spring anyway, so I think they've been down this road enough where they know it literally takes months. New York, you'll be surprised to hear this, John, New York is much more challenging than other states they've worked in. It's good news, bad news. Sometimes we are our own worst enemies. That's it in a nutshell.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did I answer all three?
Yep.
Good.
Could I ask a question now? You should let him go first because that made me think of something.
No, that's what work sessions are about. We want to answer your
We
questions.
read about the mausoleum thing. I mean, you discussed that quite at length last week or the week before, I don't remember. But anyway, with the comptroller's figures, the 69,000.
Really going to wind me up, aren't you, Debbie?
Well, it's something that has to be discussed. It's got to be on the table. Furthermore, sales tax, is, I guess, to the town 25,000 to the
Negative?
It's negative right now, for the year.
Might
Although, I
take
mean,
that.
that's nothing
I
to, you
think
know,
it could even be farther, who knows?
right now, I guess, I checked, so, 25,000 is a negative right now, which is not horrible, but it's not great, but considering that figure and the 69,000 figure and the mausoleum problems, well, what's going on there, or is anything going on right now?
An awful lot. I'll address that a little bit. As you know, public meeting, we passed, the board passed a resolution to retain counsel.
Yes.
That was an extremely good decision because we're fighting above our weight level. When I mentioned the name of the firm to people I was speaking with in Albany, I could almost hear the pupils dilating over the phone. I knew we probably had the right firm, and we do. There's conversation going on right now, and as you well know, when you retain attorneys, you have to be careful.
Sure.
Not even just what we say publicly, really, but our engagement. If you're going to put it in their hands, you got to let them do that. You can't, might pay them to manage it, and then you micromanage it.
Sure, no, I understand.
So we're in a little bit of a wait. I have pretty regular communications with them. There were a number of meetings in Albany. We did take Senator Little through this, the Attorney General's office, the Division of Cemeteries, our council, Janet Dupree's, Jill Bella went through, and others. Cameras were clicking. They were quite appalled at what they saw. There are really two issues. And again, I'm going to be a little guarded just because I'm making public comments. One is the condition of, I'll say, the business, and out of all due respect for the souls that are there.
You mean the entire, the Ellenberg, the whole thing
Whispering
together?
Maples Memorial Gardens, Inc. The way that was managed and the way their properties were taken care of is a significant issue. The other in my mind, and I have no problem being very verbal about it because I have directly, is the oversight provided by the Division of Cemeteries. I feel was very negligent. They got to a point where they began to look a little closer. There were more complaints, I suspect, and they did the only thing government can do. They decided to wash their hands of it and pass it down. And we're stuck. They had initially determined a little less than $50,000 in repairs. I'll focus on the facility here, but I never lose sight of we own half of the crematorium. We will. We don't own anything right now. Strike that comment. If they have their way, we would own half of the crematorium. Mr. Breaux went through and got some estimates, did an assessment himself, for which I have to give him credit. He said all along, we can certainly do better, and we can do the maintenance at a nominal fee. He went through, though, and he came up with over $120,000 worth of needed repairs.
Sure.
Almost 3 times what they thought they were noticing. The importance of that is the Division of Cemeteries through an abandonment process will give the municipality funds, or, excuse me, retract it. They will, there's a vehicle by which you can apply for funds, a one-time opportunity to do maintenance and improvements that are needed. And then they will review that and decide what to give you. One of the people I've been speaking with said they've seen that take many months to even get to closure. There are things that should have been done many months ago. We suspect there could even be greater needs than the 120. You mentioned the comptroller. As you know now, I believe we're 0.0073, which for the town of Plattsburgh boils down to about $6,000 to $9,000. They got a multi-million-dollar budget, and we get $69,000. After we've been exhausting reserves, reducing staff, limiting services.
Well, and now this.
And then put this on us. In fact, I made that comment to the senator several times. I said, Betty, I mean, you are a strong advocate of unfunded mandates. Are you going to give us the biggest unfunded mandate in the history of the town of Plattsburgh and many municipalities? It's only my opinion that given the circumstances, this indeed will transfer to the town. we're holding real strong on a couple of things. One, the Division of Cemeteries will find a way to provide the funds to bring everything up to par, if only out of respect for, what this facility is and what it's supposed to be. I've also, and today there were some meetings with the Director of the Division of Cemeteries and the Chairman of the State Board of Cemeteries. There were some Supreme Court conversations last Friday also. I can't remember the phrase that was used, but looking to see if the state might amend the process, because they're confident they already made their decision, it's over. They made it and they shared it, pick up the pieces. One of the things we're looking for now is that maybe we could slow this down so we could do it legally. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the decisions made don't even enable us to go through the appropriate legal processes, certain board resolutions, decisions within finance, budget amendments, transfer of properties. And I truly think it might have been Janet Dupree that used the phrase, and I've repeated it many times, so I'll give her credit. The Division of Cemeteries took a drop and run approach to this. When this first came to me a couple months ago, I mentioned to counselors as we met during the week, that this could be the biggest significant adverse impact the town has seen in a long, long time. Coupled with that, we get to raise $69,000 next year.
Well, increase your levy, that's an increase in
It's
levy.
like a family of 10, somebody saying to whoever the grocery person is that buys groceries, here's $20, go get groceries for me.
Now,
What are you
if you
supposed to
take
do?
this over, let's say they give you, let's say Art Grows 120 is good and they give you the 120 and you fix it all up. There's still, this is in perpetuity. Do you have to run, does a town then have to run this as a cemetery because people have purchased vaults?
According to the Division of Cemeteries, this is $295, 290. They treat it the same as several cemeteries that have been abandoned in the town that we manage. You mow the grass 3 times a year, you pick the weeds, and you have some responsibility for fences. I have told them, okay, we'll mow the grass. Under duress.
Is this considered abandoned at this point?
Their definition is that it's abandoned. I'm kind of interceding just so there's one big mouth talk.
Because when you talked about 281 in the newspaper,
If I said 81, I made a mistake.
and that isn't abandoning, that's not abandoned.
It's
That just talks about cemeteries.
Yeah, 295,
think you
291,
said
290, it might be, I don't know.
And if it's abandoned, what happens to the people who paid the money for the vaults?
There are 1,000 questions,
future.
which is why that
We don't
didn't
know.
happen with the blink of a hat.
We don't know.
All of those unanswered questions probably are the reason why we think they may want to sit down and come to some kind of an accommodation with us, because I don't really think they want to go into a court and try to explain why they've taken the action they've taken and not addressed all those various issues. You know, there are some, and I'm one of them, who feels that they've taken a quantum leap to say that this legislation applies to, mausoleums. I'm not aware. Maybe you're going to bring me something on that magic black book that tells me I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's exactly what it
It's
says.
sticking right
Is that you're taking a quantum leap?
Martin Manning.
there. Is it 295?
290.
291.
291, is that the abandoned cemetery one? Or is that the one you said in the newspaper? I
I don't know what I said in the newspaper.
don't either, because I didn't bring it.
I'm under the impression
291
what
is
they've
it.
done is they've taken legislation that applies to abandoned
X.
cemeteries, and they're using it in this case.
Yeah.
And that's a quantum leap.
That's a leap of faith, you're right, that's what they're doing.
And I believe that one of the things that, is a fear that they have is that they have to go before a judge and they have to have a judge hear the issues. The judge may say, you need to go to you need to go to the state legislature and get properly drafted legislation on this issue. That this is not in any fashion legislation that deals with this issue. And they never should have approved what they approved in the first place. It was a Ponzi scheme.
You mean this mausoleum thing?
Absolutely. It only could survive as long as they were selling crypts.
Sure.
And the day you stop selling the crypts is the day it all starts to unravel.
Well, as in any cemetery, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There are a
But
lot
when they're
of
above ground,
variables.
it's a different game.
Absolutely, and this isn't just an
Different
above
level
ground
of
crypt, you know, I mean,
maintenance.
it's
Totally
a
different.
building. It's
Yeah.
an actual building, it's not just a sarcophagus kind of thing.
I think you will see legislation addressed in the fall. We've talked about that. One of the things I've been trying to put on this, but we're getting ahead of ourselves because we're stuck right now with, the division did send a letter to the banks, to the employees, to us, that said, it's done. You can discuss this all you want. We made a decision, it's done. That's the law. But once we get beyond and through this, there will be some changes, number one. The only thing that's perpetual is government. It seems to go forever and total collapse. So if anybody's going to give perpetual care, it probably will be. But I agree with you. If they gave us an unlimited amount of money to fix everything perfect today and close the door, 40, 50 years from now, I need a roof again.
Yeah, and it's ongoing
So
finances.
one of the things I've talked to them about, more our legislators and our consultants, is we need a super fund, for lack of better words. If you're going to do this, that I don't expect them to buy the Windex and the lawnmower,
Paint the gate.
but capital maintenance, capital improvements need to go there. The division gets plenty of fees and assessments through the whole death and birth process that the municipality could go to get those funds. Bottom line, there's 2 or 3 things. One, we've got to be mindful and respectful of those who are deceased there. Number 2, we have got to be considerate of those who've made investments and are waiting to be deceased there. And number 3, the taxpayers.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
why
That's
should we
what's
be
like.
paying for decisions that were bad business decisions, that were bad investments, that might have been made by people who not only live in Morris, they could live in Jersey? Why are the taxpayers in the town of Plattsburgh? And that's where the law hasn't addressed this particular issue well, because it's not a bad law in the rural countryside with little family plots and churches that came and went. You don't want that to be unsightly, so you go in, it's abandoned, you mow it. No problem. Under those laws, you don't even pick up the headstones. You mow it. End of conversation. And yet they want us to maintain a mausoleum,
Forever.
have burials in the town that we're part of. So it is huge. We have to be a little careful. You won't see it on the agenda to any great updates because, as we talk about executive session for pending litigation, we could find ourselves in litigation with the state of New York. Not that I want to.
But it does have a huge, or could have a huge tax consequence, especially if sales tax starts to drop off and
It absolutely does.
inflation is low and you
It does.
can't raise the levy, or you can raise the levy, but you've got to get that past your taxpayers.
wouldn't
And then you've
matter.
got this new chunk of thing that you have to
Yeah.
maintain annually.
Very discouraging.
Deb, it wouldn't
You
matter
can't
what
get
sales tax or not, you
school
gotta pay for it, and the town taxpayers are
Yeah.
There's got to be a
One way or
distinction
the
between maintaining and running. We're not in the business of running a mausoleum.
Nobody
so
wants us
somehow
to
that
run
line
it.
has to be-
Yeah.
Their discussion on that is running it is an option. And there are, in fact, I think Queensberry owns a mausoleum crematorium and they make money on it. The crematorium here did 480 some odd cremations last year, I
Because the
think.
crematorium's in Ellenburg.
Correct, but it's half hours.
Yes, I know.
And that's more of the
It's not half
complications.
hours
It
yet.
might be.
Okay.
At someday it may
It
become,
might
thank
be.
you, definitely
He
a
said that
correction.
earlier.
But that's one of the other challenges with this, where drop and run didn't work well, because you've got 2 municipalities that haven't even agreed upon where the assets and liabilities should fall. I mean, it is absolutely ludicrous the way this was handled. They did give me a warning. We had a number of phone conferences. We had a meeting right around this table with all the King's Horses, King's Men, but the purpose of all those was to simply tell us what we were doing. That hasn't gone well. Honestly, at the end of the day, we may end up in a maintenance mode of that. What we've got to do is protect our losses. Because where else do you go? Nobody else wants it. They try to. Why would anybody buy a business that's already done? You know, as Marty said, those first few years when you've got nothing but sales, it's not bad. But now you're running out of sales. And if, I won't say more than that, you have the ability to process. If all the money were there, interest doesn't generate like it should to create perpetual care funds. It just doesn't work. It's, again, we think a failed model. And I do think there might be new legislation that would address that as well. So this really is a state test case. I mean, we've really planted our heels on this. But
We may get money, the state will never take over the maintenance.
no,
So
No.
it's the town
they
will
can't.
maintain.
They don't have the vehicle.
But
We
it's
are the state.
interesting- There's an interesting point that I think needs to be clarified. The board of directors of that not-for-profit corporation, the board of directors had a legal responsibility to the people who are interned there. Okay?
Or have purchased.
Yeah, or people who have purchased
Correct.
the right to be interned there.
Correct.
Okay? We have a moral responsibility to the taxpayers of the town of Plattsburgh.
Indeed.
And I believe that you know, the state, that the Department of State and the whatever it's called, Division of Cemeteries has completely reversed those situations. They took two people off a board, and that's all they did, was they removed them from the board. There was no action taken to seek any punishment against those people, to go after any funds that, were misapplied. Okay, none whatsoever.
There's some information we don't have
And they
also.
threw it in our lap.
I mean, the only thing we can really say on that, because this is ongoing, is I have personally made the Attorney General's office aware, and I've spoken with the district attorney.
That's good.
We don't have prosecutory,
Prosecutorial.
yeah, resources, but they're aware, and that's a concern. There's nothing, I spoke with a gentleman today, most of his family's there, and his final comment really is the bottom line. He said,
Anyways,
I
that's.
thank God you got it. Maybe now something decent, respectful, ethical, and moral will happen. What are you gonna do?
This
Show us the money and we'll make it better.
Absolutely.
But no, I don't, we haven't had the conversation, as you're well aware. At some point, this board may need to engage in a conversation about what role do they want to play beyond general maintenance.
Well, right now, you're still in limbo, so.
Right now, we refuse to do anything or touch anything. I don't, that will probably hold for a little bit longer now.
And is it still open 24/7?
To the best of my knowledge, I don't run.
You don't run any, yeah, you don't run the ads.
I don't know what's going on, if they're employees or anything else. Any other questions? It is a mess. It absolutely is. Okay. We have a short agenda tonight, and I mentioned earlier, for some personal selfish reasons, I won't try to extend it.
We did that for you.
Yeah, that is true.
In your packet, you have information concerning a proposed appointment in the Water Wastewater Department. I know, Meg, you've been pretty involved in the interviews and things. Were you part of this process?
I was not, unfortunately, able
Okay.
to make those interviews.
I did speak with Scott to some extent, and this would be the position that would replace Candace, thank you, who left the end of, she left a couple weeks ago. And I think they've had, and again, I'm going to be guarded a little bit, but if you look through this resume, she's quite well qualified based on her training and experience. We're thinking ahead to Marcia's tenure with the town, which her husband has recently retired, slowed down, and we suspect she may be leaving in a year, so this could actually be a position that the right person doing a great job with the right skills at the end of the year could move into that slot as well.
I wasn't present for the interview, but I was contacted by phone by Scott, and we discussed. I know the interviewee and was able to speak to her abilities. I was on a board and treasurer of that board when she was employed at Pine Harbor, and I spoke very highly of her. She was a very valued employee there, was the number 2 person in that organization.
I talked to Scott by phone, and this is going along with our overall long-range plan of bringing people in that can cross-train and do other jobs in that particular area. So I believe it's an excellent.
She's highly qualified.
Person for the job.
You can anticipate a resolution. Debbie just didn't get to a draft for her appointment on Monday. Next, job description, town historian. I had started talking with Jerry about this a bit, and we have a draft. It's a rather comprehensive draft. It's an appointment that hasn't really had any structure to it. We all know Jerry has just done an outstanding job in the position. We were very fortunate to have him. And I thought it would be wise for us to try to come up with some parameters. And you'll see as you go through this, please look it over. We can talk about this, we will, over a couple of rounds. The very, very last page after number 6, there was an item that, number 7, that talked about formal education. And it talked about the individual having at least a baccalaureate degree with a major concentration in American history or some related field, etc. And while, and obviously I didn't author all this, while that may be great in certain urban areas and you're able to find a person that can meet these 4 pages of qualifications and hold a degree that is appropriate from an accredited university, I don't know that we could do that in our community. I wouldn't want a job description and qualifications that would prevent us from appointing a good person who simply may not be. We often think of retired because these positions don't pay anything of any significance to raise a family on. We may not find a retired history teacher. So I stopped short there, but I'd ask you to look this over. The easiest for me might be either email to me with your notes and strikes or give me back a hard copy with things you'd like to see out or in. The other stuff I think is all pretty good. It describes the things we'd like our historian to do, their involvement, etc. It raises the bar more formally. It's just with those formal qualifications. We have people who are good, they love history, they're into genealogy, etc., but they may not have a 4-year degree or a master's in history.
Number 5, I think, important sentence is the local government historian is a professional historian and must adhere to professional standards in striving to produce objective and unbiased history. And it is much better to have somebody that's trained in that particular area.
I don't disagree.
And I don't think we need to have a concentration, a major concentration in American history. I think liberal arts history or that would do as far as what the concentration was. I don't think that would make that much of a difference if they have the training in history, and that would be my preference on that.
There are a number of skills, management skills, doing public presentations, gathering data, doing research, communicating with others, that would be required if you'd like to think you need some formal educational background. And maybe that's it, Tom, you just don't, make it in, required in the field of American history. But look it over. I know it's been busy. We don't need to. I'll keep this on work session for a little bit. But my goal is that we do have a job description for that position. I think it will keep the bar up where we'd like it to be. Number 3 is just a reoccurring, very, very, very frustrating issue, dog control. Given everything somewhat mentioned earlier about sales tax and tax cap and mausoleums, you can be sure we aren't going to have more dog control services than we currently have. David, I think, does a great job in many ways, but we don't have 24/7. If you had a full-time dog control officer, we'd still have to figure out what to do at 1 o'clock in the morning when somebody's frustrated, they can't sleep, and the neighbor's dog's howling. Just a huge number of things that are around that. Our deputy dog control officer we've used for the past couple of years isn't working, period, end of conversation. And we don't need to go into any further detail with that. We need someone. I spoke with David today. He knows of someone he was going to approach, I think, as soon as this evening, that he felt would be well qualified. Has a corrections background again, so they have some sense of working with people and law enforcement, engaging in what are many times very threatening conditions. If you want to know what David does, watch Animal Planet. The conditions that he goes into, the homes, where the pit bulls are the guard dogs for the meth labs in the back, the domestic abuse, the animal abuse, the hoarding of animals, it's horrific. Fiscally, this can be an issue. We recently had a situation with a dangerous dog. Someone's went to the judge. Judge saw upon it to allow the dog to be quarantined for 30 days so the owner could appeal. We hadn't run into that before. Who's paying for that? Who's doing that? The Elmore will not take a dangerous dog. I don't know that I blame them. Are we supposed to truck the dog to E-Town? Why are we paying for that? It was a little bit of a curveball on us, and we're discussing that. This has been a service the town offers that has been offered for an extremely, extremely cheap price. And we do a good job. We don't do a perfect job. We do a good job. If there's a car accident and the animal's in the vehicle, got to call the dog control. State police don't transport. I had a conversation with a state police officer, what was that, Ricky, this spring? And I ended up talking her through dispatching the dog. They were ready to let this dog go. Somebody was going to get hurt. She didn't feel she had the authority to dispatch the dog. We had a terrible situation because someone, thinking they were doing well, grabbed the dog, put the dog in her car. Huge mistake. And unfortunately, because of that act, the dog ended up being put down. Individual had stayed out of it, let the dog be. A lot of lost dogs find their way home. Many, many people put the dog's picture on Facebook. Soon after, somebody finds him. My son and I went down to Tractor Supply, pick up the dog a couple months ago. Before I could leave with the dog, one of the workers who had put that dog on Facebook, they came, got him as Tractor Supply. They were down River Street. The dog had wandered a bit. We had a young lady the other day bring one to Elmore from the town, said the dog looked lost. Now what do you do? At whose expense? We had one not long ago, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on these dates, Rick, because I know they float through you. I wrote the death sentence for the dog before he killed somebody at the vet, much to the displeasure of a few folks. They wanted something in writing, so I generated another form to put the dog down. I went out and saw the dog. Dave got him in his truck. I don't know how he did it. I always say, Dave, put your uniform on, get the big padded gloves. And this dog was ready to go through his truck at me. What are you doing? You can't take him to a pound. You can't let him go.
You go to your home.
Yeah, I wasn't doing that.
Take him to a meth lab.
I was, well, he came from that, so.
Oh, there you go. He would have been right
He
at home.
came from that. I guess my point is, you can't, for some people to have in their mind, oh, I'm gonna help the little lost dogs find a home. Don't we wish? That's not the operation here. We need somebody, I would ask, it's on the agenda to ask you to be thinking, but I have to share, I spoke with Dave briefly today, and he indicated he had someone that he would recommend that he could help train, who had some background experiences he thought would be viable.
Vernon, what about other towns? Do we ever, when they go on vacation, Dave would take over for them?
No.
Oh, no.
He's part-time, limited use enough, let alone running up to Champlain to chase a dog that's already got 3 hours head start on it. It doesn't
I don't
work.
think that's what Jim's asking. I think what Jim's proposing is there a way that we could do a sharing in some other respects for a deputy?
I don't think so. We don't, same thing, if it's the deputy in the town, how's he gonna make it to Champlain? This proximity is so important. Someone calls and says, there's a dog running around, he's gonna bite one of the kids. You gotta be there. And that's gotta be somebody who's close by. If you had like EMT, there's some dog control officers in the building waiting for the call, you can dispatch it. We don't have that either. Managing that, I think, would be an absolute headache. We have limited enough. If we can find another part-time.
Does the city have a
I want them
dog
to
control
be-
officer?
No, city police do.
The police.
Yeah.
Could we ever have one?
They used to
No.
have it full-time and then they cut it.
Cut it.
They have a- So the
They
police do
cut
it,
it like
Yeah.
5
State
years.
police, by law, won't touch it.
No,
or the city police will.
City police and the city do, that's part of their job description. I don't think they're too crazy about it, maybe we're, people don't like to deal with angry dogs for all the obvious reasons. We've done it, yeah, we've done it for a very, very low cost. And as I said, given all the fiscal issues, I sure hate to increase the cost as a result of caring for kenneled dogs or putting dogs down or anything else. But Rick, a lot of that goes through your office. Any other thoughts, comments?
no, it's getting harder. I know even Beekmantown has a dog control officer that works some nights during the week, but that's it. They have nobody during the day. We get a lot of calls fielded from like town of Schuyler Falls or somebody else. But, and I know I put a few calls from Rebecca into you over this. People are picking up dogs that, like in the mall parking lot. If they would leave them alone, the dog's running around trying to find whatever car that he came from.
And somebody's looking for him.
You know, somebody, and they pick them up and then bring them home and say, well, I picked this dog up at the mall parking lot 2 hours ago, and I don't know what to do with it. Well, why did you pick it up? You know?
And that really puts us in a bind because you can't say, well, take him back to the parking lot.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
No,
Here we go.
And that's it. So then you call Rebecca wants David's working a double, so he can't come, and then, if she has to have permission from somebody of authority, that's why I fielded the calls to you, and you've done what, 3 of them since last week.
Yeah.
And one lady called up, she knows who the person is that owns the dog, but she will not call him because she doesn't get along with him. So she picks the dog up, puts it in her car, and drives it all the way to Elmore's and brings it to Rebecca and says, here's the dog, I picked it up in the town of Plattsburgh, and I don't want the dog. So she gets on the phone, I said, did the lady know who owns it? Yeah, it's her next door neighbor. But she doesn't get along with him.
That's why she took it to Peru.
So,
Bernie, I'd be curious. I think this would be a good conversation to bring forward to your supervisors group. to talk about what opportunities there may be for shared service. I certainly respect that we don't want somebody from Champlain trying to, drive down and catch a dog in Plattsburgh, but there are certainly some municipalities that are, much more nearby that may be willing to collaborate. There may be some other opportunities through the county. I think some creativity might address this problem. It's not going to be solved tonight or tomorrow or even next week, but some ongoing conversations because, there are other towns that are facing this issue.
I know Beatontown, Scholar Falls is, it's the same. Ronnie Clark is the dog control officer for Beatontown, but he goes to work at 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning down in the summer, and he gets home at 10 o'clock at night, so. They're the same.
How many calls are coming through a day, Rick?
He doesn't pick up too many dogs.
No, once in a while, on the weekends or something like that.
I don't wanna be on that end of that deal.
Sometimes more. That one day, there was 3 calls that I know that I put through to Debbie or Vernon onto it. They were, they picked up, and that's the worst thing, and that's what I told the lady. I said, why did you pick him up in the mall parking lot? Well, he was running around, it was hot, and I brought him home, gave him some food and water, and, but there's no tag, no collar, nothing on the dog. I just opened up the door and he hopped in,
By resolution, we also empowered our dog control officer to take his own cases to court, which he's quite good with. And it ties up some time as well. I felt better today that Dave thought he had someone, he just needed to confirm with him, someone he could collaborate with, and we'll keep working on that. I will make a note in the supervisors group. What I think we'll do is have a lot of the same conversation. Nobody's got a spare part. It's a lot like, shared services with a lot of things. The assumption is you've got it to share. We don't. We're 48 square miles. We're large rural areas. If you could get that other part-time and share the cost of it, that's going to be an added cost. I don't know. I will put that on the agenda, Chaplain. There might be some creative idea, but most towns go through it. I think we've probably got the best one who's got the greatest capability of working with people and pets and court. Very dedicated. Yeah.
Maybe we could do some public information, not seminars, but something we could disseminate on social media with David and saying, if you do find it out, this is what you should do, rather than having people grab a dog from their neighbors and driving it.
And one of the best is take his picture and post it right away. Get others to do so. That actually seems to have some real results to get dogs back to their owners.
Yeah, because if people don't know and they're trying to do the right thing,
that's
we could just educate them with that. Maybe a simple solution.
Yep, but it's an issue, and here we are. But we do need a deputy, and we really don't have one anymore. So we'll be going forward with that.
Do we have a Facebook page for the dog control officer?
No.
Is there any legal reason why we should not?
No.
Maybe we should start that.
That might be a good idea.
Yeah.
I don't know how to build Facebook pages, but
You don't have to do it.
boy, if there was, no, I'm just saying I don't know how to do that, but I'm thinking through, that seems to get some real results, and that might be something towns could collaborate on, so there's a countywide Facebook for lost dogs.
You could certainly ask the local veterinarians.
They would participate.
To get connected, because a lot of times if they're not showing up at the
That's a
municipality,
good, I like that
they
idea.
could connect with the various vets.
But a universal regional Facebook page, I can look to see if somebody found mine and
Yeah.
post mine that's missing. I like that idea. We might,
And then Wiry could use that to help them out.
www dot whatever it is. I don't know, of course, I often look to my left and right here. What would it take to build a Facebook page to do that? I mean, is that a big deal?
5 minutes.
Right.
5
Really?
minutes. It's-
But, yeah, I'd be happy to do it.
You'd be volunteer to
Meg,
coordinate that?
one of the things that we may want to do is consider doing a group versus a page,
Yep.
so that there doesn't have to be an administrator, it could be an open group,
Okay.
and people can just post and go through that.
Well, that
cycle.
might work. That would make a difference, I know it. I've seen it.
If we want to get really creative, we could find a way to generate some actual revenue or something through sponsorships of local events. And if you're
I don't know if we
looking for-
could as a municipality, we
Well,
ran
maybe
into
not
that with
municipality,
other
But if you
things.
separate it from the municipality and you're looking
Get a
to fund-
not-for-profit,
to
yeah.
fund something to help this cause locally.
Friends of the Forlorn.
Four-legged.
For, yeah,
Not all of them are four-legged, unfortunately.
yeah. Yeah, that,
Some
that,
of them don't even have legs.
They're not running away very quickly then, at least.
They slither.
Victoria St. John did a great deal of effort with the feral cats.
Yeah.
And you almost need the same, similar thing with lost dogs. It would be a not-for-profit, just to do a Facebook page. Facebook page would do it, that people could go to. And, that would make a huge difference.
And that's-
We'll talk
that's
more
where
about
you can
that.
educate the people as to what they should do. Take a
That'd be
picture of
something
what
for
the
supervisor. This is what we're
state
doing.
where it was
Get on board,
at
they
a
would.
certain time.
That's no cost.
And we could do little videos with Dave saying,
I have a
Dave-
chip in my dog.
20 seconds, of tips.
Maybe
You have
Dave's
to
so
scan them.
Shy though. I-
Yeah,
Yeah. Prison.
Catch them
We take the
and scan
20
We get Dave's
seconds and
wife
goes
to
into
do
that
that.
house with the big one.
Good idea, we'll talk more later. Excellent, thank
Is
you.
the nice little dog?
Down to draft resolutions, there's no rocket science there. You've got the,
It's
yes, sir.
155, 156 were changed, I believe, correctly?
I did not look those over, I'm assuming they were. I know we went back and forth with that with Ricky, with Debbie, those two.
You changed those?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's got the 3 different figures in there instead of just having.
Yeah.
We didn't have
They
the
add up this time.
previous.
Yes, they,
You had a Twin State Maintenance Renewal Agreement. I believe this one is $50 more than last year, which was a good deal. This is their stuff. They service very well. They're a company up the road. We just went out prior for this service. I'd like to continue that. And then you have one for Marcy Wine. I don't know of anything else that would be surprises. Nobody has any thoughts, questions? I'm going to
Oh, we
adjourn.
probably have a lot of thoughts, but not questions for this.
At 7:45.
Oh, maybe not. It's not- Never.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Would you like to make a motion? Will you have that, Mr. Manners? I haven't done that too regularly on work sessions because they're casual. But if you want a motion, we'll do it.
We have to have a second.
Now we got a motion, we better get a second. Meg?
Yep,
Any discussion?
got it.
All in favor indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.